What's next for Arcane? Well, we can pretty accurately predict what's next based on this.
2 or 3 bigger threads. They're gonna do more shows, more movies. What would be the focal points, right? We are investing quite a bit in Noxus, Ionia, Demacia.
And so 2 to 3 big threats, and he's looking at 3 zones for character stories. You got Ionia, Noxus, and Demacia. What are some big threats he might be talking about? Well, Noxus, you got Mordekaiser. Demacia, you got the Mage Seekers. And Ionia, you got Noxus. And just judging from this initial pause, we're going to Noxus and Ionia first, with Demacia coming after that. Why? Well, because Jinx is going to Demacia, right? And we have already seen a lot of her. Maybe a small pause wouldn't be bad. By the way, a lot of people saying that Jinx and Lux are friends in the lore. Canonically, Jinx and Lux have never actually met. The whole thing about them being friends in the lore is light canon from the Star Guardian skins alternate universe. More on that in the Demacia video, which will come later. Also, there'll be an Ionia video later talking about Arcane for Ionia. And by the way, I'm not assuming anyone knows any lore. You can click on any video on my channel and always start with the assumption that
you don't know anything.
And I'm just here to smack runeterra lore into your face. Now let's keep in mind, he said
we start really with character stories,
which means that all the zones will cross over into each other for these stories. These stories will follow the characters, not the zones. For example, we may see the Noxian-Ionian War, more on that later, from the Noxian perspective, and then see it again in a separate series from the Ionian perspective. But this video will focus on what Noxus would look like in a spin-off. Same thing with some Demacia and Noxian interactions. You might see it from the Noxus perspective in this series, and then in Demacia series, you'll see that same event only from the Demacian perspective. So what characters would work for Noxus? Well, obviously Mel, she's going to Noxus. We saw that at the end of Arcane Season 2. She's got Mbessa's whole army with her. Swain, LeBlanc, the brothers Draven and Darius, Katarina, Mbessa, and Sion. And there are some great characters I'm missing, I realize that. But there were great characters missing from Piltover and Zon as well. At the end of the day, they are going to follow the stories of a few specific characters and not the zone. Do I hope we see Kled? Of course. Do I think we'll see him? I'm not really sure. But I do think we'll see some Minotaurs. Many Minotaur clans joined the Noxian war machine. Those that opposed the Empire were enslaved and forced to fight as gladiators. One of those is Alistar. He survived the games and seeks to protect his people from the harsh treatment he endured. There's also some Minotaurs in the Black Rose. But what about Swain? What's his story and how will Noxus look when we get there? Both very important questions. There's a Raven that starts showing up at the end of Arcane Season 2. Originally I thought this was Swain, which it will be eventually, but at the time it's actually a demon called Rom, and this was also confirmed in the interview. Oh, you didn't know there were demons in runeterra? We even have this art showing almost a family tree of demons. This one right here, Secrets, that's Rom, and the images we have of Rom all tend to be this red glowing eye. You can see in the middle there's this one called Nightmares, and it's under the Fear branch. That's Fiddlesticks. More on him when we talk about Demacia. So if this is Rom, we actually get a better idea as to the timeline of where Noxus is at this point. This is because Noxus invaded Ionia, that's over here on the map, and during that time, the leader of Noxus was a man named Borum Darkwill. How do we know this? Well, Swain gets the demon arm we see in game after a character named Aurelia in Ionia cuts off his arm during the war. He is bleeding on the battlefield and the Raven comes to him. But before all that, Rom is free and roaming the world, the demon of secrets collecting information. Now, who do you think would be pretty interested in acquiring and controlling this demon? Well, a secret organization like the Black Rose, of course, the one led by LeBlanc, who will certainly play a major part in the story. And just to be clear, I don't think the story will just continue from where Arcane left off. I think our story would actually start in the war between Noxus and Demacia. Demacia is over here on the map, and you're probably wondering, why is Noxus fighting everyone, and why is Demacia fighting Noxus? But what you should know about Noxus is that they were once called Noxi, a bunch of barbarian tribes who during the Rune Wars took shelter from the magical fallout in a building known as the Immortal Bastion. When they emerged, they began to refer to themselves as Noxus. The Rune Wars was a crazy war where people used world runes to fight each other, basically magical runes on a nuclear level. Whole civilizations and history of runeterra was lost. In fact, anything before the Rune Wars is largely speculation. That's how destructive the war was to the world of runeterra. There's 2 references of it in Arcane. One was from Heimerdinger.
I've seen this power in the wrong hands. It corrupts, consumes, lays waste to civilizations. You must destroy it. I've seen nations destroyed by a single seed, and it looked exactly like this.
And the other was by LeBlanc.
A calamity is approaching, rivaling even the ancient rune wars.
Now in current lore, there's a character called Rise who's running around collecting these runes, and he's storing them so they'll never be used again. But the Noxi emerged after the Rune Wars, now Noxus. They began to expand, and the noble houses swore, though it would take 1,000 years, to unify all the nations of runeterra beneath a single banner, and elected a grand general to lead their war host to victory. During the last few centuries, Noxus was pretty successful in this goal. The Noxian warbands had annexed most of central Valoran under their banner. With confidence, they marched onward, aiming to the western shores of Valoran. This is Valoran, by the way, pretty much Piltover and Zaun down here, Demacia to the left, and Freljord to the north. And by the way, I pretty much said in my zones I believe will come at launch in the Riot MMO as Valoran being the starting area, not including the Freljord, just pieces of the Freljord. If you want to know more of my prediction on that, there's a link to it up here. I go through every single zone and why I think it would and would not be included in the Riot MMO. But I would assume that if you're making these TV shows, you'd want to make zones that show up in the MMO, right? Like I'm confident Piltover and Zaun will be an MMO at launch. People want to see places that they're familiar with. And Arcane, as big as it is, has gotten a lot of people into runeterra lore, so including those zones is almost a must in my opinion. But during this time, a warrior by the name of Scion was the Hand of Noxus, an unstoppable general who led many Noxian campaigns. In the campaign pushing west, the Noxian forces, initially unstoppable, faced their match when they went up against the resilient and battle-hardened Demacians. Pushing back to the fortified settlement of Havardis, the Noxian prepared for defense. However, Scion, returning from a campaign, was outraged by the decision to let the Demacians leave unchallenged. In a fit of fury, he killed the Havardis commander and led his warband into an assault. Though heavily outnumbered, Scion charged the Demacian forces, determined to turn the tide. In a final act of defiance, he fought his way to King Jarvan I, killing him before succumbing to his own wounds. With their king slain, the Demacians retreated. Scion's sacrifice was immortalized with a towering monument in his honor. This is all I believe we'll see of Demacia in the Noxian show, as it will focus on the Noxian characters. This event is just to establish Scion, who will come later. Now they could show this at the beginning, or it could be a flashback later. But skip ahead a little, and again this could be flashbacks, but Darius, Draven, and a girl named Kalita are kids, and they are recruited into Noxus by a man named General Cyrus. Darius and Draven are brothers and very important to the future story of Noxus. Then you could skip ahead again, and that's when Mel arrives. You could also show some of Swain and Borum Darkwill's youth. Perhaps we could see some of the earlier years of Ambessa. Honestly, I could see Ambessa and Swain getting along really well. Ambessa and Darius, definitely. They all value strength. And Christian said in his interview,
A much more interesting question is, what's going to happen to the House of Mardarda? That's an interesting question. I will not give you an answer.
It seems like something that we're going to explore, so I think that will be explored as we follow the Noxian characters. Again, this could all be done in flashbacks, or they could start earlier, before the events of Arcane. I would personally like to see and follow Ambessa for a while in the beginning. Let's see the Kino events play out. Mel be sent to Piltover. Some things take place while the Piltover events take place. Then once Mel returns, we can follow the events forward. The story doesn't just need to continue. And so we'd actually start with the Noxus Demacian War in Scion, and then you'd see Darius and Draven as kids. Borum, Swain, and Ambessa would be a bit older, and explore that time before Mel eventually returns. Now during the events of Arcane, the Black Rose is operating out of the Immortal Bastion, using Borum Darkwill like a puppet and trying to acquire Rom, the Demon of Secrets, while also looking for new weapons to stop a character called Mordekaiser should he ever return. Mordekaiser ruled Noxus a long time ago. He died and thought the Death Realm kinda sucked. He whispered to some mages across the realm of death to bring him back, and he is returned as Mordekaiser. He kills a bunch of people for hundreds of years and rules with an iron fist. And he actually is the one who built the Immortal Bastion. The Black Rose stops and kills him, but it was all part of his plan. He returned to the afterlife and dominated all the souls he sent there. Can you imagine dying to this guy? Then in the afterlife he just shows up again and just enslaves you. What a horrible life and then death. But now with a massive immortal army, he waits patiently, gathering strength until one day he will find his way back to runeterra and dominate the entire world. And by the way, if you are looking for warriors for your army, Ambessa would be a pretty good pick. Just saying. But the Black Rose knows he will one day return, and why they seek powerful weapons and mages like Mel, and any other powerful advantage they can get like Rom. So should he ever return, they'll be ready. Now Swain, under Borum Darkwill, learns that the Black Rose is manipulating and controlling Noxus from the shadows. When he discovers this, he personally executes all of them. Among them were his own parents, whose whispers of a pale woman had first alerted him to the dangers to Noxus, which he valued more than house and kin. This is where I think they could change something a bit for Arcane. I know I don't want to change too much, but instead of him overhearing his parents whispering of a pale woman, it could come from Mel. Mel returning from Piltover and telling Swain what she's learned of the Black Rose. After all, she did see her face.
I see your face, deceiver. Sly girl.
They could also do away with the first discovery of the Black Rose and wait for Swain to fuse with Rom later, but I think if Mel is coming back, her against the Black Rose, it would make sense for her to kind of align with Swain, and then she'll kind of fit in with this overall story a little bit better. So let's say Mel comes and informs Swain of the Black Rose. Swain executes everyone, even his parents, and LeBlanc is also executed, although she actually just fakes her own death. It turns out that the Black Rose was seeking a power, a shapeless voice cackling in the darkness of the Immortal Bastion, something like a raven's call. LeBlanc, as I said, fakes her death and begins whispering in Borum's ear, making him paranoid of his surroundings and fearful of his own mortality. Driven by this madness, he begins campaigns in northern Shurima, the Freljord, which was led by Darius, and even across the ocean to invade Ionia, which is where he sends Swain. During the war with Ionia, which I don't think Mel would be a part of, we can further explore House Medarda and see Mel further uncover information about the Black Rose during that time. Now the Black Rose resurrects Scion, one of the greatest warriors in the history of Noxus, for Borum Darkwill. They do this using blood magic, although he is a bit difficult to control. And all this blood magic really comes from a member of the Black Rose known as Vladimir, who has been around for as long as LeBlanc, and he even helped her stop Mordekaiser. He is actually from a place known as Camivore, which is not on this map, it's all the way over here, and where another character who is pretty important to the lore of Runeterra, Viego, comes from. Actually, Vladimir is Viego's uncle, but we won't get into that whole story. If you want to learn more about Viego, I recommend my Lich King of Runeterra video, it's in the cards now. But just know that all this hemomantic magic really comes from Vladimir. And this blood magic is crazy. Basically, they have to kill to survive. If they aren't inflicting pain and killing others, it is said to be painful for them. And it would be cool to see Mel uncover these deep dark secrets and histories of Noxus, while characters like Darius and Swain are on the warfronts. Briar is another creation of the Black Rose Hemomancers, although I don't think she would appear as she comes later. But Scion is used in the Noxian Ionian War, and just an absolute tank. But back to the overall story, Borum is leading campaigns in every direction. This is all done in hopes of finding some magical artifact that could extend life, and has downstream effects in all three regions. Well, two actually. The Freljord is no joke. It's cold and the warriors there are insane. Noxus has a lot of trouble in the Freljord, mostly with the Winter's Claw, which is a warrior group there led by Sejuani. When we may get a glimpse of her, I don't think we'll see too much as the Freljord characters are not the focus. But despite Darius being in charge of leading that campaign, Noxus is just spread too thin on too many fronts. In Shurima, they push a little inland, but don't make it too far. Perhaps we'll see Samira, who is a Noxian champion originally from Shurima, and it seems the Madar does have some history in Shurima as well, judging by that Ambessa cinematic, so we could see some flashbacks there. I wonder if this war where we see Ambessa almost dying in the music video and fights Pantheon was in the Noxian expansion into Shurima. We see water, so this was definitely coastal, but the Ionian War didn't happen yet at that time. They could move up the expansion into Shurima to before the Ionian and Freljord wars, so it could still work. And speaking of Ionians who once upheld the ideals of pacifism were forced to resort to violence to protect their homeland, and resistance leaders like Karma and Aurelia began to rise. Borum became ever more desperate, sending children into battle hoping the Ionians would not attack them, and even enlisting the aid of a Zonite alchemist, Singed, to create chemical weapons of mass destruction. Now during the war in Ionia, Borum Darkwill, in his paranoia and with the persuasion of LeBlanc, set up his most trusted general, Swain, for failure, assigning him to hold the Placedium while also removing and withholding reinforcements. Swain was overrun by Aurelia and her forces, defeated in disgrace and losing an arm. As he lay on the verge of death, a raven approached to feed, and Swain felt an old familiar darkness press upon him again. But he would not let it take him, he could not. Staring into the bird's eye, he saw reflections of an evil strangling the heart of Noxus, a Black Rose, the Pale Woman, and her puppet emperor. Swain realized that he had not defeated the hidden cabal, and they had betrayed him to what should have been his death. All this was glimpsed, not in the mind of a raven, but something more. The power his parents had been seeking, the demonic eyes blazing in the dark. Cast out of the military for his failure, considered nothing more than a cripple, he returned to Noxus, and there, Swain set out about uncovering what truly lay within the Immortal Bastion, an ancient entity, preying upon the dying and consuming their secrets, as it had attempted to consume his own. Swain stared into the darkness, seeing what even it could not, a way to wield it. Though his meticulous preparations took many years, Swain and his remaining allies such as Draven, and I think Mel would be a part of this, seized control of Noxus in a single night. Physically restored by the demon, he crushed Darkwill in full view of his followers, leaving the throne shattered and empty. Swain's vision for the future of Noxus is one of strength through unity. He has pulled back the warhost from Darkwill's unwinnable campaigns. At this time, Darius, who had been assigned to lead the push north into the Freljord, had grown wary of the endless wars of attrition. He returned to Noxus to demand reconsolidation of the military. He marched his veterans into the capital, only to find the Emperor was dead, killed in a coup led by Jericho Swain. The act had been supported by many allies. This was a difficult position. As Hand, many of the noble houses would expect Darius to avenge Darkwill, but he had known and greatly respected the disgraced General Swain, and had spoken against his discharge after the botched offensive in Ionia some years earlier. The oaths of the Hand were to Noxus, not any particular ruler, and Swain was a man who spoke honestly of his new vision for the Empire. Darius realized this was a leader he was prepared to follow, but Swain had other ideas. With the establishment of the Trifarix, 3 individuals would rule Noxus together, each embodying one principle of strength: vision, might, and guile. Darius gladly accepted his place on the council as the principle of might, and pledged to raise a new elite force, the Trifarian Legion, the most loyal and prestigious warriors the Empire could produce, and lead the armies of Noxus into a glorious new age of conquest. As for Swain, he would be vision, and an unnamed faceless one embodying guile. We don't know who this person is, which kind of fits the guile principle of the Trifarix, honestly. Now, what if this becomes Mel? It's something I was thinking about. I'm not really sure. I kind of like that it's a faceless person, but it's possible Mel could become guile. But gathering knowledge, as the demon did before him, Swain has foreseen far greater dangers lurking just beyond. However, many Noxians secretly wonder if the darkness they face will pale in comparison to the dark things Swain has done. The sacrifices are only beginning, for the good of Noxus. And that is the story of Noxus. As long as we stick to the current lore, this is kind of how it would play out. Now, I have an older video that actually is based on Ishtal. It's called The Edge of the World, and it really goes into what Noxus values, what Noxus looks for in its people, in its leaders. It's an older video. It's one of my first videos, so my audio is not as good, but the effort is there, okay? The sound effects, everything. It's like a half-hour video. So if you want to feel like what Noxus values, I think that's a great story for you to go to. I also have a whole video on the Noxus timeline. Feel free to watch that. That's also a great one. Basically, Noxus has a calendar that they've established that this is the history of Runeterra, and everywhere they conquer, they basically enforce this calendar. This is the calendar of the world. I have other videos on Noxian characters. I mean, I've been making Runeterra lore videos for a long time now, so if you just look through my catalog, you'll find Noxus videos. But Noxus is one of my favorite zones. I'm super excited. I think we're gonna get Arcane Noxus. I'm making the Demacian Ionian videos next, and so we'll see what Arcane could do with those. But what are your thoughts? What do you guys think? What characters are they going to focus on? Did I miss a character that you think should have been important or integral in the story? Let me know in the comment section below. Like this video if you liked it. Huge, massive shout out to those who joined the channel. It means so much to me. I know a lot of people have been saying they want me to get back to the Legends of Runeterra cards of the day. I am definitely going to get back to those, I promise. But thanks for stopping by the Grove, and I will see you in the next one.